Pardon me while I have a strange interlude. There is nothing else. Life is an obscure hobo bumming a ride on the omnibus of art. Along the misty corridors of time, and in those corridors I see figures, strange figures.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the AP Strange Show. Tonight's show is brought to you by the Ultimate Time Travelers Conference being held in the year 3023. I've just returned from said conference, and I'm not going to tell you too much about it because that's part of the rules. If you already attended the conference, please do not give spoilers to those who haven't bought tickets yet, because we really want all the time travelers to be able to experience this in a fresh way and support the conference, because if we don't, we could have all kinds of problems. Let's just say problems, Reginald's, whatever you want to refer to them as. So we like to keep that to a minimum. That being said, we have a Third Time's the Charm special. We got kind of a special slant on Third Time's the Charm tonight because we, both my guest and I are time travelers. So we have extended Halloween this year. This is going, we understand that in this timeline, Halloween has already happened, but we've extended it so that we can talk about Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And my guest to help walk through this with maybe a little bit of a different angle on it than you're accustomed to is none other than rock star, psychedelic time traveler, space rocker, and all around good guy. Somebody that I feel comfortable as a American referring to as me old mucka. The most Reverend StarDoG, Steve Mills. Welcome, Steve.
Good evening, Mr. Strange.
So that was some conference, huh? I mean, we can't talk too much about it.
Well, I can't say too much, otherwise we'll have jiggery pokery, and we can't have jiggery pokery.
Yeah, we can't. Jiggery pokery really messes up the time-space continuum. So
it certainly does. No more.
We reserve that for the conference. We can't do it outside of the conference.
Yes, jiggery pokery. What goes on inside the jiggery pokery stays inside the jiggery pokery.
Yeah, for all time, across timelines.
But it's great being able to go to Halloween anytime you like.
Yes, I mean, that's one of the major perks of being a time traveler. So if you go back too far in time, it gets kind of grim, though. So
yes, it's somewhat extreme. Right. They do take it rather literally. Put another witch on the fire, please, dear.
It's getting a little cold. So I usually like to start these by talking about my guest's relationship to the franchise, and with the Halloween franchise. You've never struck me as somebody that's particularly into like the slasher genre of horror films. Doesn't quite seem like your bag, right?
Yes and no. I think I'm actually Switchblade Romance I'm really quite a fan of, which is weird because everybody hates that one, but I really quite like that. Switchblade Romance, the French, which is sort of been panned, and I think it's partly because it's women. It's a woman.
Oh, okay.
I'm not giving anything really away by saying that. It's a woman's story in terms of like the protagonist and the victims. But no, I think the problem is they're too formulaic. You like to see a different edge on things. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I really liked, but that was partly again because, funnily enough, I think it shares with The Wicker Man in that it's filmed in daylight and it's done in horrible sort of strip lighting. When he picks the girl up and carries her through the thing, hangs off the meter, it's in that horrible sort of strip lighting. So it isn't sort of the old dark house, which tends to be the formula for slashers. Yeah, I mean, it goes back. Is the Cat and the Canary the original?
I don't know. I mean, there's the Bat, which was that was the idea of the Bat back in the day.
That's 58, the Vincent Price one.
Right, but it was a book before that.
Oh, right, I see. Okay.
The book was written in the 20s or so.
Right. Isn't that Agnes Moorehead from Bewitched?
Yes, and Dora from Bewitched, and Vincent Price.
Yes. No, I'm thinking the original Cat and the Canary is 43.
Yeah, you might be right.
Bob Hope.
Right. Yeah.
And you've got the sort of stalk and slash element to that.
Right.
I can't think of anything English. Price.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to be in the British oeuvre of horror movies.
No, they did make some. There's the Bloody Tower, and they made that one about the theatre, which I can't remember the title of, with about 68, 69. But I think they were more sort of as a reaction to Psycho.
Right.
Because everybody just was like, oh, Psycho was a success, so let's just remake, because, I mean, Psycho's a slasher film when all said and done, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, there is a...
yeah, so as far as like the Halloween franchise, the ones with Michael Myers, because, spoiler, he's not in the third Halloween.
Which is why we're here.
Right.
But I think it also needs to remind them that Carpenter himself did not want to make just a series of Michael Myers films, and that the whole idea of the Halloween franchise was that each year he or somebody else made a film that was related to Halloween. It's just that because cinema's cinema, because the first one, I mean, it made a fortune, didn't it, compared to what it actually cost to make. It turned Jamie Lee Curtis into a star. They just went, oh, well, we need another Michael Myers film. Yeah. So it comes up. I can't even remember the plot of the second one.
Well, the second one, it picks up exactly where the first one left off.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis is like still in the hospital that she gets brought to at the end of the first one.
Yes. Yeah. But that's not what Carpenter wanted to do.
Right.
Carpenter's idea was to tell a different story every Halloween,
which is a good idea. And I mean, he's a producer on Halloween 3.
Yes.
And I think that that was the whole plan, was to bring in a good writer that could write an original story that has nothing to do with the Michael Myers thing. Yeah.
I think also, I wonder if he got to watch the Ghost Stories for Christmas series, which was done by the BBC in the 1970s, from about 1969 onwards to the late 70s, which every year they did an M.R. James story for Christmas.
Right.
And I wondered if he saw that and thought, oh, that's good, because they are. I mean, they are considered quite groundbreaking. I mean, Whistle and I'll Come, the original black and white with Ralph Horden in it. Is it Ralph Horden? Michael Horden is brilliant, absolutely superb. How to scare the crap out of the world with a sheet.
I mean, I think, I think he was more inspired by episodic or anthology style TV shows. And I mean, maybe even by like the anthology movies, because there's a ton of those.
Oh, the whole
Amicus. Amicus movies. We could absolutely do a show just on those, because
very much.
Some of them are god awful, and then other ones are better but still not great, but they're so fun.
But they have some amazing stars. They have some amazing actors in them. I mean, when you think about it,
they always do. Yeah, they get the best actors in these piece of crap movies.
There's the one with I think it's one of the last ones. In fact, it might even be the last one, where Peter Cushing plays the shopkeeper.
Oh,
and everybody.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
Everybody who rips him off ends up getting and then there's one who doesn't, and that's the best story as well. That's really bloodthirsty. That one.
Oh, I want to see that one.
Oh yeah, right.
Because there's Dr. Terror's House of Horrors is a fun one.
It's Peter Cushing with the Yorkshire accents.
Oh, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if I could picture that.
He does it well. No, he does it well. I can't think what that one's called. The shop of something or other, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, he's a shop owner, and people come in, and he's got antiques and what have you. And I think there's four stories, and 3 people rip him off, 1 doesn't.
Right.
What have you? But yeah, it's quite.
But yeah, I mean, the anthology idea is a solid idea, and I mean, you can bring in a lot of different flavors. And my introduction to Halloween 3 growing up was, I was watching like a lot of those stupid slasher movies with my friends, and they had this whole mythos around it, like, oh, like there's all these Jason movies and the Freddy movies, and then Michael Myers, and Halloween 3 was always one that people just sneered at. And they're like, what a stupid idea for a movie. It doesn't even have the character in it that's in all the other movies. You know, it doesn't even have the monster. So so that's kind of where it came from, and I feel like people have had a bad attitude about it and generally not liked it up until recent years. I feel like it's had a cult reappraisal. Well,
I think it's because people have discovered that it was written by Nigel Kneale. And therefore, the Nigel Kneale fans who wouldn't probably, like you were saying, I think people who tend to watch Nigel Kneale films probably don't watch slasher films. So they never watched any of the Halloween franchise. Well, they might have watched the first one, but they would not bother. But because he had his name taken off it because they changed the plot, or the focus of the plot, they didn't know about it. So I think it's since people, oh, it's Nigel Kneale. Oh, we're going to check that out then. Yeah. Because I mean, you know, he rightly has a first reputation. I mean, I can't think of a single writer who's added more tropes into the weird than Kneale. Yeah. And for somebody who's
so just for people listening that might not be as familiar with him, you can just give like a little bit of who Nigel Kneale is and
sorry,
things he's known for. Yeah.
Nigel Kneale started off life on the Isle of Man, where he went to school. And as we've spoken about, he was on the Isle of Man at the same time Gef the Talking Mongoose was performing his tricks.
That's amazing.
He went into law. I think he became Manx law is different to English law. I think he became an advocate, but he didn't like that. So he moved to England, the mainland, just as the war kicked off. He applied to join the army, but he was rejected on medical grounds for any form of service. He's got photo sensitivity. He's got certain photo sensitivity. I can't remember exactly what it is.
So it's probably vision problems, right?
Yes, yeah. So he was not fit to serve. Now, this is the bit that I find a bit strange about his life. All you can ever find is, and if you can look this up in Wikipedia. If you look up Nigel Kneale, it's Kneale, Kneale. If you look it up,
how is that pronounced in Manx?
Oh yes, Nigel Kneale. It is his original Manx. But if you look at his Wikipedia thing, it just jumps. The whole of the war is just missed out, and all I can get out of the society, you sort of gatekeeping stuff, is that he practiced law during World War II. Okay, he did, but I'm just interested to know a little more, you know, what he actually did. But it's like nobody seems to want to talk about it, which again brings us back to yours and I pet sort of project, which is people in the media who did weird things during World War II.
Right. Well, because that's kind of a classic cover, isn't it? Where you're deferred for medical reasons, you become some kind of operative under the radar. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I just have this feeling that Nigel Kneale was another one of Rex, Christopher Lee, Ian Fleming, Michael Benzine. All these people that they're all SOE or attached to SOE. So I was just wondering if Nigel got up to something. And then after the war, his first And it was groundbreaking. And I remember my father telling me this, and my father wasn't particularly a sci-fi fan at all. But I remember my dad saying that when his first series came out, which is Quatermass Experiment, it was the first science fiction series on British TV, written for British TV. I think it was 1951, 52, around the time of the Queen's coronation, when people started buying TV sets en masse in the UK. And it was the first sort of TV sensation in terms of drama. And it was, my dad said it was massive. People used to go home specifically to watch it. And his first one is, it's a bit like, I mean, it definitely sort of leans into the Frankenstein. There's even the bit with the girl who's Paul McCartney's girlfriend, the one who was in The Mask of the Red Death. I can't think of her name, but it's her when she was a very small child, apparently. But he kind of reprises that scene with the where Frankenstein in the original film picks a girl up and throws her into the lake, thinking she'll swim. Because she's been trying to throw us into the lake, so he just thinks she'll float like that. It's not deliberate; it's just naivety. There's a bit in Quatermass of the Pit when the guy's arm is changed, and Quatermass Experiment when the guy's arm's changing, he's transmuting into this sort of alien creature. He's taking over his whole body. Where this little girl, would you like a cup of tea with me? So she's sort of a bit of a loner, and he sort of swipes her aside. So I think she, what have you. So there's a definite sort of. He was sort of referencing without a doubt the sort of classics going back to Mary Shelley, who many see as, quite rightly, the founder of modern science fiction.
Right.
So that became huge to the extent that the BBC commissioned another series, which was Quatermass 2, where Kneale, for the first time, really introduces this whole idea that aliens are taking over society quietly. And I don't think that really, aliens. This is the period of the Space Brotherhood. This is the period of what's his face? Contact.
George Adamski.
Yes, George Adamski. This is where it was all the Space Brotherhood, and they're all from Venus. You had the Man from Venus, the British film, which is a sort of equivalent of Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah, and I mean, Adamski was huge in England because Desmond Leslie wrote the first book with him. Yeah, Flying Saucers Have Landed, so that would have been kind of widely read.
Indeed. Along comes Nigel Kneale and puts this totally paranoid conspiracy theory slant onto ufology. And it's like, whoa, it's like... and it starts off with the second film starts off with there's a tiny little sort of research station in the middle of nowhere, and suddenly they get millions of pounds, and Quatermass is driving, just happens to be in the area. There's a girl has an accident. Her husband's been hit by this sort of weird thing that's fallen out of the sky, and he's got this scar on his cheek, and he's acting strange. And Quatermass finds his moon project for sort of domes on the moon for living in is being built on Earth.
Yeah,
secretly, and that's so that whole sort of paranoid. They're working with the government. The government's been taken over by alien trope. Is Nigel Kneale. Right. Really, he's the first one. If you think about it, it was always us, the Earth versus the flying saucers. The flying saucers trying to teach us something. It was never the humans were never part of the conspiracy.
Right.
Apart from married a monster from outer space. That sort of similar. Right. And then he made Quatermass of the Pit, which again introduces the whole trope about humans being, humans and the Mars connection, the connection between
some Hollow Earth stuff.
Yes, the occult and ufology are blended together in the Quatermass of the Pit.
Right.
He also made a thing called the Sex Olympics, which was a play which he forecast reality TV.
Huh.
It's basically what they do is that people it's in a future society, and TV sort of controls people. And what they do is they set up this island where these there's cameras watching them 24/7, but they put a psychopath in there. They put a killer in with the things. Watch what happens. Well, then that's Nigel Kneale. So again, he had this incredible.
That's a real twist on the slasher kind of idea.
Yes.
The reality TV slasher before reality TV even existed.
Yeah, well,
wow.
This is it. So, but by the same token, he was a bit of a curmudgeon, was our Nigel.
Yeah.
He didn't like the 1960s. If you see the last Quatermass TV series, which is okay, but I don't take to John Mills as the character. Don't know why, he just didn't work for me. But he didn't like the whole sort of the change in society. He saw it primarily as a bad thing. He wasn't. Don't get me wrong. Quatermass and the Pit was inspired by the race riots in Britain. Yeah. And part of what he was warning against othering people. So from that point of view, he was a decent bloke, but he was who he was. He came from that particular background, from that generation, and he found the 1960s difficult. So by the time you get to sort of the 1980s, he's not sidelined, but I think he's finding it difficult. He did write. I don't know if you know this, and it's available on YouTube. He wrote a situation comedy about an alien on Earth, and it's not very funny.
Was it for the BBC?
Yes. So if you look it up, Nigel Kneale sitcom, the whole I think 6 episodes are all on YouTube. They're all available. Like I say, it is of its age. It shows how old he was. Let's put it that way. Some of the attitudes in it.
Right. Yeah.
It's harmless fun. I wouldn't say it's particularly funny either. I don't think he had a gift for you. But the one thing that is quite, and one of the things that Halloween 3, one of the reasons I think he had his name taken off it was that, particularly in Quatermass and the Pit, the relationship between Barbara Shelley's character and Quatermass is never developed. Yeah, and yet you can tell that there's a certain thing between them. The two, and Robert, what's his name, Andrew Keir and Barbara Shelley. They part of why Quatermass and Pit work so well, the film version, is because the chemistry between those two, between them as people, is very natural. It's very believable, and you can sense that there could be something else, but it never develops, and he never really ever Kneale never really ever goes for anything like that. So that whole part of the plot in Halloween 3, with her having the relationship with the Doctor, that wouldn't be it. That wouldn't be. I can certainly Kneale going, no. That's
right. Yeah, I mean, he seemed like he was. My whole impression was that he operated more on subtlety and suspense and innuendo. Just kind of implying things and letting the audience, trusting the audience is smart enough to know what's going on.
Yes.
And that you don't need to spell it out and then beat them over the head with it. Whereas in the movie, it's like, okay, so this woman's father just died. She hasn't even arranged a funeral or anything, but she's taken off and leaving town with this doctor, and they're sleeping together. Before they've discovered anything, And I
can imagine Kneale going, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But there's a limited edition coming out of his Stone Tape, which was the made-for-TV film, which is excellent, which is very good, which is about a haunting. And it's all about them looking for a new form of data storage. They're testing data storage, and it's kind of the Stone Tape theory. That's partly where it comes from. It's from Nigel Kneale. I don't know. It's difficult to track it down whether the Stone Tape theory existed before Nigel wrote that particular show, or whether it came afterwards. I'm not exactly sure, because I'm too bloody young to know that. So I was only
I
15.
mean, I feel like it's an old parapsychology thing, but I don't know how old. So I
That's
mean, you might
exactly.
be right. Yeah,
I can't find anybody originally who posited the theory. I can't find
it was a
anybody
good
prior.
question. I believe it was somebody in England, though. I mean, I think
Yes.
it
Yeah.
was from the Society of Psychical Research
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
get that idea. But I imagine they developed it from like the castles and things there.
Well, the
Like
most famous place I know is the pub in Shropshire, where
okay,
there is tape, and you can hear sort of faint conversations in the background. And the pub is closed; there's nobody there, and it's got a
yeah,
high iron content in the brickwork that it was built with. And the theory being that the iron itself was magnetized and was actually tapered, and that if the circumstances are right, it replays itself in effect. But
right.
there is a BBC tape that they left in there because it was all thought, oh, it's a bit of a joke sort of thing. And then the BBC were quite impressed. Oh wow,
Yeah.
there is definitely sort of what sounds like conversation, but there was the pub was shut. But
Mhm.
so I think that's really the single sort of instance where, oh yeah, well maybe there is something to that. But which brings us to the plot that Nigel Kneale really wanted to talk about in Halloween 3, which is the Sarsen Stone, which is funny enough, I think it's the one that isn't. I think it's the one that they think now comes from Scotland.
Okay.
That's meant to have been stolen.
Right.
By the chief baddie in the film, which he's
So
breaking
yeah,
into, and he's basically chipping off tiny little parts of this. So of the what is supposed to be the sacrificial stone from Stonehenge,
Stonehenge.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
putting them into the masks that he's selling to all the children.
Yeah. So I got his name wrong. I mentioned this, and the same actor is in RoboCop and RoboCop 2 as the old man that runs OCP. Um, so
Oh,
I got his character's name wrong in this one because I mentioned that he was also in this movie. Connell Cochran is his name in
oh
this
yes,
movie.
yeah, he
Yeah,
plays the yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so he's the old man that stole chips and pieces from the sacrificial table at Stonehenge, and he's put them in microchips that are inside the masks, the novelty Halloween masks that are selling like hotcakes in this movie. um, and for the purposes of sacrificing all the children like they used to do in ancient Gaelic or Celtic
Yeah,
Samhain festivals.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. On the night, was it particularly 9 o'clock at night on Halloween? All the kids are supposed to sit in front of the TV, and
Yep.
there's going to be announcing like somebody's won a special prize, and
Right.
it's clickbait to get them to sit in front of the TV so they can trigger the microchips in the masks that they're wearing, and then
Yeah.
basically all sorts of weird was it creepy crawlies and snakes sort of appear out of their head and then explode.
Right.
A mass
Which is pretty
sacrifice.
creepy. I mean, I
Oh
don't know. Like
yeah, yeah. I
the
mean
one
that's
kid you see it happen to, it kind of sucks because his parents are right there, and
yeah.
like,
And there's the
so,
woman as well who's sort of fiddling with and it goes off by mistake.
yeah, she's trying to take it apart and it shoots her in
Yeah,
the face. Yeah.
yeah. It shows in the face of what a good thing. But that was really the plot that Nigel Kneale was wanting to concentrate on, and the angle of the Stonehenge, because I think there are two versions of the film, two print versions of the film that are printed.
Huh.
I believe the one I first saw starts off with a report about the stone being stolen in England. There's a
Oh.
TV reporter, and it's
Well,
like
see,
this
that
is
would make sense. That would be some nice prologue going on, like
there's yeah, it's effectively a prologue to it before it cuts to the mayhem with the guy being killed by the clockwork creatures. But
right.
that the clockwork part of it, that was just meant to be a bit almost like an aside in the original script.
Yeah, but they what from what I understand is the American studio, it was Universal actually. This
Uh-huh.
was the last time that Universal put money on a Halloween film until the franchise was well older and they could do a remake. Um, but um, they had some buyer's remorse with this installment, I guess. But they wanted more gore.
Mm.
They were pressuring Carpenter to add gore where Neil wouldn't have wanted it. He wanted it to be more suspenseful, so they had to
Mm.
have the Mechano-Men going around murdering people in
Yeah,
really
the particular.
brutal ways.
Yeah, crushing the heads and whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like you said, the love of interest is exaggerated and
Mm.
ways that wouldn't have flown in a Neil script. But one thing that struck me about the Mechano-Men in this movie, I keep calling them that because it's the silliest name I can come up with for essentially what they are. I've seen other write-ups that call them androids, and I don't think that's quite right. You say
the
Clockwork Men.
yeah,
That's what it is in Neil's
what do they what was the what's the classical name for them? Oh,
automatons.
automatons.
Yeah,
They're
right,
automatons. Mm.
yeah. But what they strike me as in the movie, I couldn't help but think of this, not this last viewing, but the time before that. That they kind of remind me of like Men in Black, right? They have this
Oh
kind of like, yeah,
yeah.
uncanny, sinister, kind
Mm,
of unaccountable vibe to them because they don't
mm.
speak; they just kind of appear. They're well dressed, and
Dead eyes.
yeah, and they don't behave like people would,
Mm, mm, mm,
like
mm.
so. Um, so it's kind of an interesting little thing like that. That really struck me one of the times I watched it. I'm like, wow, this is really kind of feels Men in Blacky on, on
I
this one, you
think
know?
I wonder. I do wonder if Nigel Kneale that was the angle. If Nigel Kneale originally probably wrote them as black suit, dark suited, black tie.
Mhm.
Maybe he wrote them like that because I'm sure he react. He wasn't just. I'm sure he reacted to things as well, and that was. I mean, the MIBs have been around for what? That film's 83, 84.
Yeah,
So the Men in Black have been around for 15 years by then.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mm.
the
They'd
Albert
entered the pan.
Bender's book. Yeah,
They'd entered the pantheon, the sort of psyche of the paranormal, hadn't they, by then?
right,
Because, but again, it comes back to Neil was a bit of a pioneer. I mean, you've got to get, everybody's got weaknesses and what have you, but Neil was a pioneer. There are very few of the people, like I say, who place so many things which have become tropes in the
right,
accepted pantheon of weird shit now that people, the Mars connection, the
right,
occult, and the UFO connection. The government is the government are involved in with the aliens connection. All those really originally came from Neil's films, and I often wonder, um, when you look back. In fact, I noticed this the other day. James, because you've been doing things on Valiant Thor, haven't you?
yeah,
Your book thing about Valiant Thor.
yeah. One of my recent book videos, I was talking
Well,
about.
that's James. That's that weird looking character called James. Was the guy who was involved with Valiant Thor, wasn't he?
Right,
And James is the person who's in the TV series, Jerry Anderson TV series UFO. The only time they ever use a real reference to UFOs in UFO is an interview with James,
hmm.
the
About
Valiant
Valiant
Thor,
Thor.
who was meant to have met Valiant Thor, wasn't
Right, yeah, yeah.
he?
Um, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I guess the idea is, or the operating thesis you have is that Neil was kind of planting a little bit of real life weirdness into his stories as tropes,
I
or
think, well, I don't know. This is it. I mean, because he always insisted he did not believe in any of it at all, and yet it was
right,
such a good. Maybe because he had no dog. He had no dog in the show as such. Maybe that's
right,
why they worked so well. That because he didn't believe it, he had no. He wasn't. He didn't have a particular axe to grind. He wasn't trying to push any particular agenda when it came to the weird. which is why I think Halloween 3 works, because it's a great fucking story. It's a really, really fascinating, it's a really good plot. I think it, and unfortunately, I think it is unfortunate they didn't go with the full Kneale version, because I think, one, it wouldn't have been successful, but I think people would have looked back on it and gone, Christ, that was a really damn good film. Whereas it's an okay film that's a bit let down by, not so much plot holes, but it's shoehorned, isn't it, to a degree? Right. And so the relationship's sort of not natural. It doesn't feel natural. It feels forced. Well, it's like, it's 1980s. Well, we've got to have some sex in it. It's the 1980s,
Yeah. Look, our audiences expect a certain amount of heave and cleave out of our movies.
Oh, yes, well, this is it. Nigel, you're English. Surely you've done Hammer. But isn't that funny? Is that the Nigel Kneale Hammer films are the ones without the heave and cleave? They are the ones that break the spell. They don't include heave and cleave. They never did.
Yeah, there's a conspicuous lack of fiery biscuits in the
Kneale. You can imagine just saying, but the thing is, I guess as well, if you're a female actor, you must have been really pleased to think when your agent got in touch with you and said, "Oh, there's a Nigel Kneale."
Right.
Because Barbara Shelley's character in Quatermass of the Pitch is very sympathetic. She's a scientist.
Yeah, she's smart and she's just a normal character. She's not like not to besmirch her name, but she's not like Ingrid Pitt in half the movie.
No, exactly. Yeah. So she's a very believable character, which is great. Yeah. I think that's really good. I like that. I say it would have been interesting, I think, had they gone with that more character, where the female lead in Halloween 3 had been far more self-contained. So she didn't need, you know what I mean? I mean, Barbara Shelley's character, she's the one who's leading Quatermass. He's the one sort of who goes, no, it's ridiculous. Right. Well, you asked me to research it. You seemed interested in it yesterday. It's like, but we're scientists. And then suddenly he says, well, maybe ghosts are just badly observed phenomena. Badly observed scientific phenomena. So I think her character should have been more like that, and that would have made a better film. But again,
and they could have had a main character doctor that was believable in any way, shape, or form. Like,
because he just looks like a professional footballer.
He does, yeah. He looks like what's his face? The Death Wish guy, the guy in the Death Wish movie.
Oh, Joel Bronson.
Yeah, he looks like Charles Bronson on steroids.
Is it the same guy? Is it the same guy from The Fog?
I don't know.
I think it's the
same. Well, the thing for me is like he spends all of his time drinking or sexually harassing every woman that he sees. And
like, which annoy Nigel no end, because his lead characters do not do that.
Right, and he does very little doctoring the whole time he's there. I don't see him really do any doctoring.
Really, the only real interaction on a doctoring level is with the what's it called? What are they called? The coroner, the female coroner.
Yeah, which isn't even his purview. He's not supposed to be dealing with her. Like, there was an active police investigation. He's just trying to con her into doing her own tests and letting him know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Which ultimately gets her killed.
Yes, Because she susses the fact that there's no human remains in the accident either. That all she can find are bits of clockwork motor and what have you. That's all she can find, isn't it? There's no real human. There's no flesh, is there? Everything.
Right.
Which obviously that gets her killed. But yeah, I mean, so from that point again, it's that. Don't get me wrong. There is violence in the Quatermass thing. And in the original TV series of Quatermass of the Pit, there's one thing that's missing from the film. There's an American aircraft, and there's an American news flash because London's cut off. London goes dark, and there's an American. On the TV series, it cuts to it cuts to an American TV show, and they're talking to two pilots who are flying into Heathrow, and they're flying across London, and then the plane gets taken down by by that point you've got that bloody great effigy of the devil, the horned, the insect effectively is towering above the thing, and it takes the aircraft down, and that crashes. So that's not in the film. That's not actually, that bit's missed out in the film, which is unfortunate. And also, the other thing that's missing from the film, there's a seance. Quatermass goes to the seance, which is unusual for Kneale. He doesn't normally do that sort of thing, but in that one, for some reason, he did. And I think that's the bit that they didn't want to do, that they ran shy of at the studio with Halloween 3, was that the genuine sort of occult edge to the story, which he wanted to bring in. And again, it's this thing, the juxtaposition of science and the occult, that they are one of the badly perceived phenomenon. So you go back to the Quatermass thing, and that was really what the film was about. And I think they bottled it. Would this have been the same period as The Evil Dead?
Yeah, this was 1983, I think, that Halloween 3 came out.
So you had all this satanic panic. This was really the beginning of the whole satanic panic thing, wasn't it? Because The Evil Dead was the focus, wasn't it? But the evangelists really didn't like The Evil Dead.
Yeah, I mean, it was generally... Okay, so Evil Dead came out in 81.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I think they bottled it. I think the studio, when Kneale wanted to do the more sort of occult thing, because of The Evil Dead, I think the studio will have the evangelicals after us. I think there's a bit of that in it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Because
there
was an awful lot of horror movies that came out during the 80s.
Yeah, but how many?
Beginning,
The only big witch film I can think of from the 80s, and maybe it wasn't even the 80s, was that one with Julian Sands.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called? The one where the one involving the time thing, where the woman's getting older because she's stealing her thing to rebuild himself. But that's really the first witchcraft sort of fully occult film that I can think of from between the sort of 81 and what they sort of shied away from it to a degree in America. I think because the kickback, evangelical, the kickback off of Evil Dead, and this whole video nasty thing as well. Was there? Did they have them in the States? Did they have that sort of crackdown in the USA on video nasty?
Not the same as they did in the in the UK, but because I mean, you couldn't even have realistic looking blood in the movies in the UK for a while, right? That weren't they like? That's why it looks like kind of pinkish and not quite right.
Oh well, yeah, that's interesting. I think that's more of a product of the fact they used the film stock they were using, which is
all right.
Yeah, it looks pink. Everything looks pink. Yeah, hammer blood.
Yeah, the hammer blood.
Particularly with the old, because they always say that the scene that changed everything is the scene where Peter Cushing shoots Christopher Lee as Frankenstein as his creation, shoots him in the face with the shotgun.
Oh.
And Christopher Lee does that, holds his face like that. When he lets go, there's pink, there's blood everywhere. And Carpenter himself said that was the scene that inspired him. That was the scene that, as a kid, he went, wow, I want to make films. I want to do that. Right. Yeah. That and the Mummy. Yeah. That and the Mummy where he shoots him, because they were saying they did the poster before the film, and you've got that thing with the shotgun and then the torchlight going through the mummy's sort of bandages, like it's been shot through. So I think, well, that wasn't in the film originally. And when they saw the poster, they went, "Oh, you better put that in the film."
Yeah.
So he does that bit with the. He's got that bit with the sort of spear, where Peter Cushing sort of stabs him through with the spear. It goes all the way through him. But that was inspired by the poster. Apparently, they did the poster. They showed in the poster. Oh, we've got to put that in the film. But again, that's the other thing that Carpenter. That's the other piece of the thing that Carpenter said. They were the two bits that totally inspired him. So Carpenter's whole career is in homage to a degree to Hammer and to a certain extent. Carpenter pushed for Kneale to write Halloween 3. He was big for it, and it's a good score. We got to say that it's an excellent score by Carpenter in that film. It's a really decent, good, creepy score. That, and also we need to think that Nigel Kneale in the 90s turned down the chance to write for the X-Files.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Why? I don't know. He just said, I think he just said, not my thing. I think maybe he was getting old by then. I think maybe he felt that the timelines and everything with the pressure that goes with it, because obviously the X-Files being a series, it's very different. People forget. Particularly difference between the UK and America is one, an hour show in Britain is 46 minutes.
Yeah.
There's 14 minutes, if you take the end credits and everything, whatever, the adverts, whereas that usually translates to an hour and a half in America with adverts. So 47-minute show in Britain or 51-minute show in Britain, when it's shown in America, usually takes up an hour and a half a slot.
Right.
Whatever. So British series tend to be 8 episodes. That's it. 6 to 8 episodes. America is 26. And I think Nigel, getting older, I just think he thought, I don't know if I can do the time thing. Because I think they wanted him to do like an overarching, they wanted to do a 2 or 3 story arc that had an overarching sort of link. Well, to give him a chance to, because with America, with the adverts, the X-Files in Britain is effectively a 45-minute show.
Yeah.
45
right.
minutes. So,
yeah, and I mean, X-Files did have some guest writers. I mean,
yes.
There's an episode that was written by Stephen King,
Oh, which one? Oh, it's not the one with the old couple, is it? The Ghost Story for Christmas one?
No. Scully goes to Maine for some reason. I think she's just trying to go on vacation. Mulder's not there. And it's a story with like a haunted doll, basically.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, of course, it's Stephen King, so he had to have them go to Maine. Right. It's like more than half of his stories do that, but yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point, at 4th or 5th season for X-Files, they were bringing in a lot of guest writers because they were like, well, let's open this up, let's mix it up a little bit.
That's it, and I think so. But I think Nigel was probably getting on it because I think he died 1999, 2000. I think he's been dead for a while.
Right.
But which was sad because I think he would have fitted well into the canon of the X-Files. I think he would have added something to it. And I think it's a shame that, like I say, they didn't run with the original ideas that he had. I've heard a couple of other people who said, "Oh no, that wasn't what he intended to do." But from what I've spoken to people who are totally besotted with the guy in terms of his writing, they all say, "Oh no, it definitely was." He was looking to push the whole sort of confluence between modern technology and the occult. That was what it was about. That was what the original. It was this mass sacrifice, and that was the whole sort of thing it was geared towards. Apparently, because giving spoilers here, but that bit at the end, where the power suddenly takes off and it kills everybody in the facility,
right?
That's Kneale.
Yeah.
That's from the original script. That is from the
Right.
original script. I don't know what the original ending was, to be honest. I don't know whether he left it open, because that was maybe the sort of thing. Although he tended to, well, I guess, no, he did tend to end things, didn't he? There tended to be closure with Nigel Kneale. Not necessarily good, but like
Right.
with Quatermass the Pit, basically London's a mess.
Yeah.
Completely destroyed London, but it sorted it.
Not the cheeriest ending in the world.
yeah. And well, I mean, the ending of the second one is because in the TV series, it's not just the UK; it's all over the world.
Mm.
He discovers that these factories have been built all over the world. There's one in Brazil.
Right. Yeah.
There's one in Siberia, and it's like he just turns around and goes, "Is it?"
Well, yeah.
And in fact, in the TV series, he's stuck in the rocket ship in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
He goes to he actually travels rather than just as in the film where they destroy it with the rocket just collides with the asteroid that the aliens are living on and destroys it. He actually goes to he actually travels in the spaceship himself, and he's basically stuck in the rocket in sort of Earth's orbit, going round and round. Don't know if he get him back. Well, obviously they did, because Quatermass in the Pit, but
yeah, he got back somehow. Yeah. So,
but again, I say the Stone tape. There's a limited edition just about to be released of the Stone tape. There's a lot of extras. It's 25 quid, so it's about $30. In fact, without VAT, probably 25 bucks. But the Stone tape's well worth watching. And it is on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it. I thoroughly recommend it. It's a very good, creepy story. Just a very good, creepy story. It's really well acted as well. I know one thing I will say about Nigel Kneale is that he attracted decent actors. He never liked Brian Donlevy as Quatermass, and Donlevy was a drunk, but the Hammer needed an American, North American, because he's Canadian, isn't he, Donlevy? They needed an American star to sell it to the American distributors. But by 1968, Hammer had enough kudos with the distributors in America to be able to think. It's called 20 million. Is it 10 million miles to Earth? Is it called in America? Quatermass in the Pit?
I think so. That sounds
20
right.
million miles to Earth or something, whatever. But thoroughly recommended. And I recommend Halloween 3. It's a cracking film in its own right. Yeah, it's not, it's not Michael. Is it? But by the same
Michael Myers,
yeah. By the same token, I wish he'd done what he'd originally. It's a shame he didn't do what he originally intended to, which I guess was to get other writers in that he'd been inspired by to write a Halloween film, and he would produce it and do the music. And that's all he really wanted to do. Did he produce Halloween 3?
Yes, he was one of the producers.
Yeah.
But then there's another guy directing that also was the writer. He's credited as being the writer because
yeah. Because Kneale took his name off the script.
He didn't want his name on it.
Yeah. What do they call it? There's a particular.
He pulled an Alan Smithy on that.
That's it, Alan Smithy. That's it. What's he called? I think it is credited to Alan Smithy in the credits. I think it is. I think it is Alan Smithy. Yeah. That was how people first saw that somebody else had written it. And it was who wrote it? Yeah.
Well, for people that don't know, listening, if nobody's willing to take credit for writing a film, it gets credited to Alan Smithy. So if you see that name on the credits for something, that's what that means, is that everybody's so embarrassed by the script. And often it means that like a dozen people or so have tried to like fix the script and like it's just hopeless, So, but in this case, it was really Nigel Kneale just didn't want his name associated with it and his reputation associated with it.
Which is a shame in a way, because I think it would have saved it to a certain extent, in that it would have opened it up to more of an audience who would have gone, "Oh, it's Nigel Kneale, I'll watch it." And like I say,
it almost would have been better if Universal wasn't the one behind it, with the big budget and everything. If they had to go with a lower budget, studio maybe, and like less studio executives meddling in it, and just
Well,
trusting
again,
Carpenter. Yeah,
again, it comes down to this thing that Nigel Kneale had complete control over what he did with Quatermass
right.
in terms of the script, with Hammer just let him do what he did because they were successful. And I think, to a certain extent, I think he felt a bit insulted that it was like, look, I have a reputation. Everything I do, people say is really good. And you're telling me, oh no, we need to, we need to put the heave and cleave in it.
Yeah,
We have to definitely have violence.
yeah,
So, like I say, there always was. I mean, the violence in quite a massive bit is pretty fucking explicit. And the guy in the alleyway where he's being sort of covered in rocks and what have you, when the
right.
psychokinetic powers all go mad. I mean, that's pretty explicit for 1968. That's quite sort of,
Yeah. But it's not the same as a Mechano-Man jamming his thumb and forefinger into an eye socket and then crushing the guy's skull from the inside. It's a little different. But
I can imagine it was a bit. That was a bit.
Yeah.
But he's one of these people who has become a legend despite himself.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever. I would imagine it was a bit like Tolkien, and Tolkien sort of really didn't like the fandom that went with the books. I think Nigel was a bit the same himself. That it was like, because the people who tended to be attracted to his films are the sort of people he tended to write sort of he wasn't particularly keen on. It was like people like you and me. He's like,
yeah,
you're a bit, and I don't think he ever wrote it as a warning. I don't think he was trying to warn people off or anything like that. I think he was always open-minded in that sense. But it's just fascinating. Like I say, he always absolutely insisted he did not believe in any of it. Yeah, he wrote some of the best ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, without Quatermass, you don't have Doctor Who. You don't have a lot of
no.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think you're perfectly right. I think you're totally right there. I think Quatermass is the ground zero for Doctor Who. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. He sort of solidified the if you look at most of the sort of sci-fi films from the period, the scientist is usually the sub character to the go-getting reporter. Maybe not. Maybe not this island Earth. Maybe it's a bit different. But again, it's glamorous.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Whereas for the first time, the character
or the scientist is the bad guy.
Yes, yeah. But for the first time, and I think again, this is why he had his name taken off Halloween 3, was because the character, he wanted the Doctor to be a proper Doctor, a genuine Doctor with gravitas. And I think the female character was the same. They were meant to be two people who bumped into each other, who were challenged. Their belief system was being challenged by what had happened to her father, and the same with the Doctor, that he'd seen something which had challenged his belief system.
I mean, that's what makes the whole plots feel really bizarre, is that they just accept without reservation that something really weird is going on. And this is a company town, and it's run by spies from Conklin, and something underhanded and weird is happening. Like, who would assume that about a toy company that makes Halloween masks?
Well, exactly. This is it. And you can imagine the Quatermass character in that situation. It would have been a completely different dynamic, and it would have been more exciting, I think.
Yeah, it's a better movie because it makes sense, like something you can relate to.
But again, isn't this the big studio problem with anything to do with sci-fi or horror? The moment you say it makes sense, they just look at you with like blank eyes.
Right, yeah.
But it's a horror film. It does not meant to make sense.
Right.
No, do you not understand that all the best horror films are the ones that you think, shit, that could really happen?
Yeah, I mean, because the first Halloween movie is a good movie. It's suspenseful, and you don't really get a solid explanation of what Michael Myers is. Like, his backstory, but you don't really know like why is he going around killing people? Like,
It's
is
Donald
he
Pleasance, isn't
immortal?
it?
Donald Pleasance plays Dr. Loomis in that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. You see,
Yeah.
Donald Pleasance's character in that is what's the
That's
word?
more the scientist character that's
Mm,
being the protagonist in it. Yeah,
yes,
because
and
he's a psychologist.
he
Yeah,
himself is sort of fascinated by what Myers is doing.
he's trying to
He's,
figure it out. Yeah,
yes, yeah. He's studying it in effect.
yeah, but there's this supernatural element where Myers can't be killed. He's
Mm,
essentially the boogeyman. He's
mm,
become the boogeyman, right?
mm, mm.
And that's the thing for the whole rest of the series is just it's the same thing over and over again, pretty much.
And that's
But
where you get. That's why, like I say, Carpenter brings in Kneale because Carpenter knows that Kneale is so good at doing the bogeyman thing
yeah,
that all
yeah,
his films involve the bogeyman, be it the government, secret government conspiracy, be it the Frankenstein sort of almost Frankenstein monster of the first one, where it's somebody transmuted into a basically.
yeah. You can't.
Have you seen the first one?
The first one of what?
The first Quatermass experiment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's turned it into what basically a sort of what would you describe it as an amoeba?
Yeah.
A
Right.
giant amoeba, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Sort of almost like a triffid in a weird sort of way. Well, I mean, the first one, and then, like I say, Quatermass the Pit, you've got this whole thing with. Where, like I say, he first really posits this whole thing about the connection between the occult and UFOs, and it's like, wow, never
Right.
thought of it. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw it when I was about 14. I remember thinking, wow, this is John Keel.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
This is what John Keel's talking about. This is what what's his Jacques Vallée's talking about.
Yeah.
And he was, but like I said, this is the problem you have with the studios, isn't it? The studios look at it and go, oh, no. We just want fanciful. That's what you are.
Or
it's just fluff,
right. Yeah. Or nobody cares that much about it. And but also the studio heads are like confused if you don't spell it out for them. They're like, well, I don't think audiences are gonna get it unless you tell them exactly what's happening. And it's like not giving the audience any credit. It's the difference between reading League of Extraordinary Gentlemen by Alan Moore, like the graphic novels, and like watching the movie. Like that's the difference we're talking about here. It's just because Alan Moore will reference works of literature and expect you to know what it means, and if you don't, that's fine. Like maybe when you reread it someday, you'll come across it.
Yeah. I mean, you can go back to things.
Yeah, in the movie, you've seen that, right? Yeah. In the movie, they beat you over the head with the references they're making, and like make sure you understand this is from a book, because I don't think any of the audience have read books.
My problem with the League of Gentlemen as a film is I spent the whole film thinking Johnny Depp turned down the part of Dorian Gray, didn't he? They couldn't get Johnny Depp for Dorian Gray. It's like
the movie's so bad. Sean Connery's like, okay, we're done here. I don't need this anymore.
I'm quitting acting. Yeah. I mean, it's a romp, isn't it? And this is, and it comes back to this thing again that studios this is the problem with Halloween 3, that Kneale was offering something quite cerebral, but at the same time creepy and scary. Yep. And it's like, no, we can't do that. It's like, why? That's what you're hiding for in the first place, you bloody idiots. Right, yep. You knew when they said no, if you bothered to go out and look at it or asked somebody who knows the shit about this stuff, then he'd gone, oh yeah, just let Kneale do whatever he wants. Though you might not like it, but the people who count, the audience will love it because it's Nigel Kneale. And, sell it on Nigel Kneale, Quatermass and Pet and all that.
Yeah, would have been a good idea. But then we wouldn't have had the beautiful mess that is Halloween 3, the Season of the Witch, because I think the parts that make this movie bad are still really entertaining.
Oh,
like the flaws of this movie are great in like a cheesy movie kind of way.
Oh, yeah,
highlights. the highlights that shine through from Kneale's original ideas are still there too. So it's kind of the best of both.
Oh yeah, the core of it, the core of it, you can't destroy. Yeah,
right.
The core of it's great. It's a really cool idea.
Yeah,
it's sort of thing that Clive Barker would have done, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I would say Clive Barker's the sort of nearest thing to Nigel Kneale in the sense, and that he has sympathy for the other side of the story.
Right.
Because there's that brilliant, one of the best parts of this is 1968 when Quatermass turns to Roni and said, if we found out that the Earth was becoming uninhabitable because of climate change, what would we do? And Roni goes, just carry on fighting like we always do. Right. I mean, it's just like, oh, hang on a minute. How 40, 50 years later, you're like, oh, right, yeah, we did. That's exactly what happened.
Actually.
What have you bet?
Smoke them if you got them.
But isn't it? But even back then, the Quatermass was the understanding of another society that is not human.
Right.
The Quatermass has that stop trying to anthropomorphize it. We have, the human condition as it seems to insects, and he goes, well, yeah, basically that's about it. That's really what happened. And it's like, but I like that about it, that he's willing to sort of like, understand the perspective of the baddie, in inverted commas. That it's not just a cartoon cutout, which is kind of what happens in Halloween 3. The baddie becomes basically a cartoon villain, doesn't it?
Right. He's a super villain.
Yes, yeah. Which is kind of not what Nigel Kneale works on normally. You know what I mean? The villain will be a very real character in itself, and I think that's going to be. It's like so. It's a great laugh. Get me wrong, it's a great Halloween film in that sense.
Yeah.
But it could have been brilliant. It could have been brilliant. Yeah. Which is a shame.
I think it's still, as we're getting toward the end here, I like to talk about how it stacks up as far as the other movies go. And I think it's my favorite of the bunch just because I'm not huge on slashers myself, but I think the first one is great. And the third one is just mystifying. And the more you dig into it, you're like, okay, well, I think people listening to this will have some insights that maybe they didn't have before, whether they've seen the movie or not.
Yeah, and I think if you go back and watch it now and you get knowing more about Nigel Kneale, I think you can appreciate the film.
Right.
Because I think
imagine what it could have been. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
But what it is still pretty entertaining. So where do you think it fits within the overall picture of the franchise of Halloween?
Well, I would say after the original, which is a great film, really, really well done film. I would say it's probably second. I think the problem with the whole Michael Myers thing is he didn't really want to do it. Carpenter didn't really want to do it, so that kind of reflects in all the other Myers stuff. The second one, thinking about it, isn't bad. It's quite a good film. I'll put that third. But once you get past into 4, 5, and 6, it's like, before you bloody know it, you got Scrappy Doo. You like Michael Myers versus Scrappy Doo in the bloody franchise. And once you get Scrappy Doo, you're doomed.
Because to your point, Carpenter really just wanted to go do other things too. He wanted to make other kinds. So I kind of feel like They Live is a very Kneale story. Story.
This is it. This is it. If you look through many of the different Society,
the
one that I think is often underrated. It's got two of my favourite female actors in it, Salma Hayek and Femke Janssen, The Faculty.
Okay. Oh yeah.
That's a really underrated film, but I
always forget about that one. Yeah,
that's very Nigel Kneale in It's a Quiet Way.
Yeah,
and it's about science. I mean, basically, he's a drug dealer. That's really kind of interesting in the sense that it's the sort of guy who's manufacturing drugs for his schoolmates who works out how to defeat them. So that's quite that again. And I think this is it. Nigel Kneale's legacy is writ large through sci-fi and horror to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, I think that goes for. I don't think where I think that goes for cinema across the world. Somebody was telling me that Quatermass of the Pit was quite big in Japan.
Interesting.
He did quite well.
And Japan has like had a huge surge of interest in contactees and UFOs in general.
Oh yeah, but that new series, down, the new anime series. That's a cracker. That is. That's really fucking. She's basically got telekinetic powers, and he's been cursed by a witch. And then she gets kidnapped by aliens, and he's with her when she gets kidnapped by aliens.
Well, that's good. It's got a little bit of everything.
Oh yeah, very much so. But yeah, I mean that's fascinating. Like I say, folk horror even to a certain extent because he relies on. I mean, Quatermass is a folk horror film, isn't it? Really, because it is about the oldest stories and the oldest sort of religious stories in the world. You know, the bit where the guy goes through and he finds the guy wearing the mask with the two horns that look identical aliens and what have you. I think that, and the Stone tape, I would highly recommend people find it on YouTube. The quality of the picture's not brilliant because it's a 1970s TV thing. I think it was shot on videotape. I'll be interested to see the new release that's coming out, whether it was shot on film or not. I'm not absolutely
sure.
I'm
wondering if that'll be available in the US as well as
I mean, I don't like you wouldn't pay VAT on it, so even with the postage, I would say it's going to be about $30.
Okay.
But it's got quite a bit of It's got quite a bit of other stuff with it. It's Blu-ray as well, I believe.
Oh, all right, cool.
But again,
sorry, go ahead.
But again, it's this whole thing again rooted in folk tales. It's a story of the place that they open up for research has got a long history of ghost stories. And the people from the local pub, oh yeah, it's been haunted for years, you know, what have you. And they do see the ghost, and it is basically effectively it's being replayed by it's been trapped in the essence of the building, and they think that they can use that to store data on. That's kind of how it works. That's really what the film's about. It's a good ending as well.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, the ending's excellent as well. It's quite cynical.
Well, don't give it away.
No, I won't. But it's quite cynical. Would you say that?
Yeah.
But anyway.
So, last question I have here is: do you have any insight into the name Quatermass? Because it's a peculiar name. Do you know where he came up with that?
I've heard various stories, and the one I heard was that when he was looking for a name for it, his main character, he went through the London directory, and he came across a funeral directory called Quatermass and Son. Anyway, that's the story. Other people say differently. I think it's one of those. It's a bit of an urban legend. I don't know. I don't know if it's an interview where he was. I don't know if there is an interview that you can find, you can look up where he's directly asked that question, and he replied. But that was the story I was told, that he got it from the London directory when he was short of a name, and he just went to the London and he saw Quatermass funeral director. I just thought, oh, that's it. That's got to be the.
Yeah, it is kind of weird because the average person, I think, reading it would just. I see a lot of people do this, and I did it at first. The first time I read it was read it as Quatermass because your mind just matrixes it.
Yes, you will see the R's there, the extra R's there. Yeah,
right.
So other people, I think the other thing is it's a Manx name.
Is it?
It's a Manx family name, and that's where he got it from. That's the other story of it.
Oh, that's why it sounds strange to me because it's
pronounced Nickley. As Gef the Mongoose would say. He's a very naughty boy. Nigel's been up to some very naughty stuff this week. He's been looking at fiery biscuits online.
Well, so I mean, I'm just guessing that he had some run-ins with Jeff as a child, and that informed
It
his
would be.
idea.
I wonder, but did it inspire him?
Maybe, yeah,
I mean, because he was the talk of the island when he was at school, and
right.
being a school kid at that age, you can imagine it was probably the sort of thing that school kids talk about. You know, anything weird like that. So I do wonder if Jeff kind of, was maybe what inspired, pushed him towards that sort of thing, because it just seems
And
to come out.
in general, Manx folklore is really kind of different from the
Yeah, yeah,
main Isle
yeah,
folklore.
yeah. What do you call the
A lot
Triskelion?
more giants and stuff, and
Yes, yeah, yeah. With Triskelion as a symbol as well. These
yeah,
three legs. But I mean, it's like he came out of nowhere. That's the weird thing about it. It's
yeah,
like he didn't seem to show any interest in any of this sort of thing, the occult science fiction. And then bang, he could fully fledged with the original Quatermass script. Like I say, people, you really need to understand this was a sensation in the 1950s, between 1952 and 1958, I think, which is when Quatermass and the Pit came out as a TV series. They were massive. They were huge. I mean, I remember my dad was a journalist, and he hated anything which meant that you had to be in a particular place at a particular time each week to watch it. He
right,
really didn't like that. And but he said he used to. He said, I remember making my way home to quite deliberately to watch Quiet. I'm like, but Dad, you're never really into that sort of thing. He said, I know. He said, but it was, at the time, the whole country was just completely sort of locked into it. So I mean, the viewing figures of it must have been, pretty much everybody who had a TV was watching it at the time, and people would go round. Yeah, I think it was because I think one of them started at Christmas. I think Quiet Mass
yeah,
2 started around Christmas. It was like over the January period. It does say it does. If Prime TV, if you've got Amazon Prime, the original TV series of all these, sadly, there's only 2 episodes. The first episode is of the original series. Is the only one that still exists. But the whole of the second series, Quatermass 2, and the whole of Quatermass and the Pit as a TV series, you can find on Amazon Prime.
oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
the only unfortunate thing about Quatermass and the Pit is the spaceship in the original TV series.
Yeah, yeah.
It just looks like a fucking dildo. It looks like some. It just seriously, it looks just like exactly like a bloody dildo. I mean, I'm sure at the time nobody realised that. You know what I mean? I'm sure they're completely innocent, but
Yeah,
the film is found into much better reputation. You can get models. I bought my friend for his birthday. I bought him that Carstairs figure.
yeah, yeah.
I showed you that Carstairs figure. The same guy does the original spaceship. So I'm thinking about it that for Christmas. What the fuck's that?
Yeah, do it.
Put it on the shelf, What you sex toys out, Dad. No, it's quite much the pet, honest. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, in fact, one thing I would mention that I don't think anybody that Kneale introduced, the spaceship is sentient in Quatermass and Pit.
Oh, cool. Yeah, right. So
The
that kind of
spaceship,
predates.
he works out that all those weird fronds that they find in it that look like sort of melted plastic. He works out that's actually it's the ship's brain. The ship flies itself. Right. So
Yeah,
that's another thing that Kneale sort of came up with. Was
right.
sentient.
And that's kind of true with the TARDIS and Doctor Who.
Yeah, and unlike
And then in Star Trek, you had the computer. Yeah,
unlike elongated muskrat, it actually bloody works.
yeah. Imagine that. Well, it's its own kind of life form, I guess. So
yes, yeah. The creatures on Mars have created a life form that is the ship, which is good. I mean, that's another trope that sort of drifted into, has become embedded in ufology, that these ships might be sentient.
Right.
There's talk, the Rendlesham ship was interactive.
Yep.
Whatever happened to Reverend, and people found it was interactive, that they're interacting with the actual craft itself. And there's been there are other stories about that. Sorry, I've been on a bit of a Preston Dennett thing in the last couple of weeks. Been watching the shows because he collects stuff from all that. What I like about Preston is he just relates the stories. He'll tell you if there's only one witness.
Yeah.
Or whether there's more than one witness. And I like the fact that he'll try and find stuff. He does some great stuff from Poland, man.
Yeah.
There's one you'd really like, a sort of very much All Colours Bob, All Colours Sam story from Poland about a little bloke in the sewer, about a little figure in the sewer.
Oh, that sounds creepier. Way creepier than All Colours Sam's.
Yeah.
So is this stuff on YouTube?
Yes, yeah, Preston Dennett.
Okay, all right. I'm familiar with the name, but I haven't watched any of his stuff. So.
No, he's very sort of matter of fact. He doesn't really add anything to it. He just tells you the story as far as he can do, as far as he can find to research it. I don't really get into the light being and all that sort of stuff that he might do, but he's just recounted the UFO stuff from around the world. He does. I mean, he's very good at finding stuff from Sweden and Poland and other places. He's very good. Most enjoyable, and he comes up and he does like specific episodes where he'll do interaction with humanoids, interaction with robots, interaction with things. So you sort of pick and choose. But I recommend that. Yeah, it's good, man.
Cool, good stuff. All right. Well, this has been, I think, a success of an episode for Third Time's a Charm. We kind of took a really different tack on this one, and really.
Well, we do dribble about with them.
Yeah, we do. We're wibbling along the wobbly way here, as always. But thank you so much, StarDoG, for coming on to talk to me about this.
Thank you, Mr. Strange.
And I will see you in time.
Or time. Or another time. Or yesterday. We'll see you yesterday like we did last week.
Yeah, yep. That's about right.
Take care, young man.